Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And we're back. Welcome to Time to Teach, episode 68, entitled Incorporating Physical Movement into Learning. Before I even go into the episode description, I just want to say I'm in a different location as I'm recording. Not really that far away from where I usually record, literally just a different room in my house, so there might be some extra background noises. I'm really sorry about that, but unfortunately I cannot record where I typically do, simply because I don't feel like moving into that room. So I'm just maybe being a little bit lazy, but yeah, I'm just going to stay right where I am because I have all of my equipment, being my laptop and microphone and coffee. So goodness knows I don't want to have to move all of those things. So if you hear some extra background noises, just let that be a reminder that this is real life and real things are happening. So you might hear movement. It's just part of my life. There's things around me. So that's what that is. Okay, so before we get started, just a little background and really intro on what today's topic is. So the whole physical movement aspect into learning is really coming from the fact that I am actually focusing on this as a learning strategy within a PLC that we are doing. So I think I've referenced this before, but we are doing a year-long Marsano PLC. So this also includes that we have a Marsano, and I think everyone knows Bob Marsano, or knows the name, so I probably need little introduction. But if you don't know him, he's a big name in education, and I would be greatly surprised if you don't. But if you don't, any quick search online will bring up that name. But anyway, so a representative is coming down and working with us several times during the school year. And at the time that I'm recording, we are in the 2018-2019 school year. So, but aside from those multiple visits from this representative, we're all doing, it's school-wide. This is the whole, all four sections: early childhood, elementary, middle school, and high school. We're all undergoing this PLC and this with the Marsano representative, and then we're also broken up into PLC teams. And this year they are vertical teams, whereas last year our PLCs were grade level. They're vertical teams, and yeah, so in my team, we all have basically chosen something that a strategy we want to focus on, and mine is physical movement. And I just thought, and physical movement as a means to keep students engaged. I just feel it's super appropriate for my grade level. I've mentioned this before, but I teach pre-first. This is not a grade that probably exists anywhere other than at least here in Mexico, a lot of the American schools, because they're bilingual. And not only are they bilingual, but there's two programs going on. You've got the American program, you've got the Mexican program, and then of course dual languages. And then we also do have other students who might speak a third language. So because of that, there's this extra year called pre-first. It's in between kindergarten and first grade, and it just allows them a little more time because cognitively they're doing a lot of stuff because of the dual programs and the dual languages. So yeah, so it's very appropriate for my students. They are 6 years old or, going on 6 years old. So I really wanted to focus on this strategy, not just like moving to move, although there will be a little bit of that and I will explain that, but actually incorporating it into the learning. Like, how do I incorporate more movement? We have a lot of movement, and again, I'm going to go over what movement already exists in our learning, but I want more movement, especially since I have some very, very squirrely students. They really need this. So that's what I'm going to be discussing today. Specifically, I'm going to look at, what I've already been doing and what I've been trying and what else I want to incorporate at this moment. I'm sure I'll discover new things. So that is what today's episode is about. If that sounds interesting and something you could use, then please join me on this ride. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump right in and get started with this thing. Okay, so basically, like I said, I'm focusing on physical movement as a means of engagement, and there's really a lot of things that I've already been doing. Because come on, my students are so young. Of course, there's a lot of physical movement. So I'm going to kind of talk about what are some of the things that I already do. And I'm sure there's probably other things that I'm not even remembering, because I know when I started and chose the strategy, I'm like, well, I already use like a lot of physical movement. But then when you have to narrow it down and name all the things, sometimes it's hard to think of everything you do. But okay, here's some of the ways that I already incorporate physical movement into the learning that happens. To teach students letter sounds, we use Jolly Phonics. If you've never heard of Jolly Phonics, it's just a really great way to teach kids sounds, and they include like an emotion or an action. So for example, and you teach them through these songs, so that's good as well. But anyway, so like for the letter A, there's a little song that goes answer my arm, answer my arm. And anyway, as when you do the for the letter A, you kind of like tap with your like 4 fingers, kind of tap on your arm and run it up and down your arm as if those are the ants going up and down on your arm. So that would be the action that's involved with the letter A. So yeah, with the Jolly Phonics, and we go over the letters and sounds every single day. We may not do every letter every day, we don't, but we do it during our word work time. We will focus on whatever letters we're currently looking at or whatever sounds we're currently looking at. And then when I work in small groups, then I go through the whole alphabet. That's kind of like I have my special routines with them, and that's how we open up. Our little small reading group is going through the letters and sounds. But that physical movement part and the motion really helps the students learn and attach that sound to the letter, but also just like that physical movement part is just so good for them and so appropriate, which is why I love things like that. So yeah, so using Jolly Phonics, and that's something we've started. When did we officially start? Maybe last year or the year before. I can't quite remember, but I want to say it might have been as recent as last year. Okay, another way that I've already been using physical movement is acting out stories. Now, this is something that comes from workshop model, Lucy Calkins, and it's such a fantastic strategy. I mean, it's really amazing. I just remember like one time a mom came into my room. I think she needed to tell her child something, and I just thought like, oh my goodness, from the outside maybe it looks a little bit chaotic in my classroom, because you have like kids who are interacting and engaging with their text by acting out the stories. So when you don't know what or why they're doing it. You're like, oh, they're just like totally playing. And yeah, they're playing because they're acting out their stories. So it's a way to get them to engage with the text and really think about, well, what's happening? And then they actually do the thing, whatever that is. And I love it so much because again, it's super appropriate for their age, but just that engagement level, and the kids love it so much. I mean, really, it takes reading workshop it takes reading to a whole new level. They really learn to love their books and their stories because it does feel like playing. And I know not everything can be entertaining and so enjoyable, but we do want reading to be enjoyable. That is, one of our goals, because if something's not enjoyable, our students probably are not going to carry something out into their, their home lives or their, their personal lives, even when they get older. But if it's an enjoyable experience starting at a young age, then they're really going to love reading, and then they're going to want to hang on to that, right? And that's really what we want for them. So acting out their stories, and I have them do that with fiction and then even nonfiction. I've had them do this in like small groups where they act out, like they read something we'll read a book together, and then, okay, now I want you to choose one of the things that we learned about, whatever it was, and then act it out, and then another student can guess what was it. So it's just an amazing way to interact with text, and so appropriate. So yeah, that's our next item. Okay, moving on. There are also some things that I do that are just kind of incorporated within our day. Like, so something that we do is, choose a good place to sit. So students do not always have to sit at their desk to work. Specifically during reading workshop, it's, you get your materials and you find a good place to sit. And of course, the first several weeks of school is actually practicing how to do that. And how do I find a good place to sit? How do I know what a good place to sit is? And that's like me modeling, students modeling that, oh, there's no one in this area. There's nothing that's going to distract me. So it's kind of modeling how they would choose that, because even when you model it and practice it, of course, there's going to be some students who will kind of find places close to their friends. But eventually, after you practice it and talk about, why do I not want a distracting place? Because, I'm going to get distracted. And then if I'm distracted, I'm not working, and I can only grow my brain when I'm working, then it starts to become more internal. So just the act of being able to kind of move around is allowing physical movement. So that's not directly into the lesson, but it's giving them what they need, especially at this level. They need to kind of move around. Brain breaks, we all know. So of course you want those movements, like I just explained, that are embedded within the lesson itself or embedded within your day, but then having brain breaks. And I've done this a lot this year, almost more than ever, because of the dynamics of my group. But there are tons of videos and tons of different things that they can do that's just really going to give them the movement, get oxygen flowing through their body, kind of break up what you're doing. So those are always fun. And sometimes, you may have a scheduled time in your day. If I'm going to do it, a lot of times it's before math workshop, because that's the last hour of the day, and that's when students are really kind of needing to take that little break. Let's see. Also, just the way that our day is kind of worked out. I don't like to have them doing any one thing for too long. So again, that's another example of embedding it within your day. So what I do is we start the day, the students come in and we have like our little morning routine. So they come in, they put their folders away. I might have some papers that they need to stuff into their red folders. Red folders go home at the end of the week. So they might do that. But once all that is done, they come, they sit, we kind of do our morning reading, we do our shared reading, and then I open up with our first daily 3 rotation. And that rotation lasts about 15-ish minutes, up to 20 minutes. And then we come back to the carpet and we have a 10-minute, and really with this group, I've been keeping my mini lessons like 5-6 minutes. I know it seems like, can you do a lesson in that amount of time? Yeah, you can, because I've had to. So I do a lesson at the carpet and then off they go again. So breaking up what they do during the day, it really, really helps. And then, we come in and same thing after recess. Well, actually not after recess. They have their Spanish class. And then after Spanish class, we do about 10 minutes of word work all together at the carpet. And then they go off and they're doing some type of independent activity. One group is with me. One group is with our TA, and then the rest of them are working on something different. Again, that's about 15 minutes, and then back to the carpet. We close reading workshop, and then we're going to open up writing workshop. I'm going to open it up with a quick lesson. My lessons are very quick. Then we go off. Sometimes we stay at the carpet to practice whatever we just talked about, because I find that sometimes if I teach them and they don't actively do it, even though there's an active engagement part, it might just be them doing it with me, or it might be use your just pretend like you're doing it with me in terms of magical pencils, and I'll explain that in a minute. But that's an active engagement piece. But then when I want them to independently do it with their own piece, sometimes it doesn't really get done when I send them off to their seat. So I actually have them do it at the carpet. So then I'll send them off, get your pencil, and then come, we're going to sit down, and then we do it together. And then they go off. And now we're in a new unit, which is, really making writing for readers. So that means that we have to really incorporate some more conventions. Basically, they don't know it in that language, but that's basically what it is. So we're kind of stopping mid workshop and reading through what we've written and check that, do I have finger spaces? Did I use nice handwriting? Oh, hey, that's a snap word. Did I spell that correctly? So changing it up and mixing it up, that's a great break that's embedded. Actually, I kind of got the idea this past Friday that I think what I'm going to do is when we get to that stopping point that we're going to read through our work again, I think I'm actually going to bring them to the carpet for a couple of reasons. Number one, for that physical movement piece. Number two, just to make sure we're doing it. And again, it doesn't ensure that they are doing it, but I can sit there at the carpet with them, and I have better, I can better at a glance see who's doing it and who's not doing it, and provide support for those who need that support. But I think when I do this, I'll have my TA stay with the group, and then the day that I have push in with our support teacher, Miss Jackie, shout out to Miss Jackie. I love all your support. I always say it takes a team of us, right? It takes a village. So I love all that support. Maybe she can stay with the group. I understand that maybe in your case you don't have that, but just bringing them all to the carpet is a way to kind of oversee and get a quick glance of, are you really doing it? You'll get some kiddos who try to carry on with what they were doing, but it's a great way to just, get them moving and also seeing what they're doing. So I have that. And then let's see, as I mentioned, I talked about magical pencils, and I said I'll explain a little bit more. That is a movement piece where, I've been doing this for years, but it's like, okay, now I'm going to stretch out this word. Can you stretch it and spell it with your magical pencil? So they put their pointer finger up and just act like they have a pencil, and they're writing it with me. So they're not really doing it, but they're actually practicing the skill with me. It's a way to get everyone to do it. And you can do that as well if, say you're doing writing with the students, and you're having one student come up and write something. All of them can be writing with their magical pencils as the other student is actually doing it. That way you get more students involved, and then the physical movement piece. Let's see, other ways that I have incorporated. I have 2 wobble chairs just arrived this school year a couple weeks ago. I only have 2, so it's very challenging, and I wasn't sure how I was going to manage this. Eventually I just had to really actually just make this into a ticket. that students can buy with their Starbucks at the end of the week, because I only have 2. They all want it. I could have done a system where we take turns and I go in number order, but I just thought since so many really want it and they all really kind of need it, some maybe more than others, but I thought, well, I'm just going to make it into a ticket. So wobble chairs, anything that allows them to move, is super great. And then, of course, just like I said, activities that also just really include physical movement. Some activities that I've done, last year I did an episode, or maybe I did a couple, I can't remember, on paper towns that we were building. So any kind of building activities are really great. My kids worked on that for many weeks. I don't even remember how long, but during math stations, they built a paper town with their team. So that was, building and moving. Let's see, I've also had Lego numbers this year in our math stations, where they have to build and stack Legos on top of each other based on numbers. So for example, the number 2, I'm looking for the actual word 2, the number 2, and then 2 dots that represent the number 2. So any kind of like manipulatives and things like that, that's what I've been using. Okay, so those were things that I've already been doing to include physical movement before really focusing on this strategy. Now I'm going to go into new things that I've been doing as this strategy has become my focus in my PLC. Now these things that I'm going to list are fewer. It's fewer things that I've currently adopted and tried, because I'm just starting to incorporate this as a strategy. So whenever I'm learning or trying something new, I don't try to do a million things at once. I'm going to try one thing and try to get really good at it, and then maybe add something else. I just feel like the more time I can spend on something and really get to learn it, then that is going to help me to, do really understand the strategy better, whatever the thing is that I'm doing, and be able to later incorporate it into other areas, really going deeper instead of just covering the surface, basically. Okay, so one new thing that I've started doing really since starting this PLC and focusing on the strategy of physical movement, and also based on the needs of this group, is changing up the way that I do math workshop. So now I do math stations. I'm no longer teaching whole group. I only teach in small groups. So basically this came about not just because of my PLC, but really I was discovering with this particular group of students I have, they cannot handle whole group at the end of the day, at least not right now. This might change later as they've built up their stamina and their endurance and they're a little bit older. So somewhere in the school year, perhaps this will change, but currently where we are, whole group teaching is not a thing that happens during math workshop. So I'm now doing math stations. And with my math stations, basically there are 4 stations, and each station is about 10 minutes long, and they rotate through the stations. So this is really nice because it means every 10 minutes they're changing their activities. This might mean that they're having to move to go to a new place, but they're also moving to return the materials, to get their materials, and they're having to change their, cognitively, whatever they're thinking about or doing. The kind of cognitive work they're doing is changing also every 10 minutes. So it's a fantastic way to incorporate the movement part, because it's just kind of embedded in the structure of math stations. So I'm loving this. It's not like it's without any kinks and things that I still want to work out, but I am definitely loving this and preferring it to the way I was doing math workshop, particularly because it more fits the needs of my group this year. Okay, the other new thing that I've been trying is every week we get new snap words. So I used to always teach them. Oh, I didn't even include this in what I used to do. See, I forgot that. But I teach them their new snap words. We spell it, we say it, and then what I do is, okay, now magical pencils up. Let's air spell, and we air spell the word THE, the, and then I'll say let's tap and spell THE, the, then let's snap and spell. So that I've been doing, but now I'm having them do it and stand and march in place as they do it. Then that's for our first introduction of the words. Then throughout the week, as we go through them again, I have them march out the words. So that's something new. And it's good. They're getting up, they're moving, and it's so what they need. So what they need. The other new thing that I've been trying out is something, it's for blending and segmenting, and it's called pound and sound. I found this online. I don't remember where, but I was looking for, really, I wasn't even looking for movement. I was just looking for some new ideas to do blending and segmenting, because looking at the data from my initial phonemic awareness assessments on my students, I have a good group of students who really kind of need some intervention and extra support in this. So I have them in groups based on this. But anyway, that's why I originally was searching for new activities, and I found pound and sound and was like, hey, this is great also because of the physical movement. So basically what happens with pound and sound is they have 3 different colored cards. So my cards, I have an orange, so orange for the beginning sound, white card for the middle sound, and a blue green for the last sound, the ending sound. So they have the 3 cards in front of them, and we pound and sound out the different sounds. So for example, cat, I'll be like, cat, let's pound and sound. So they pound k, at on the different cards, and then they take their fist and go back to the beginning sound underneath it, not on the cards, because the cards will move, and say, okay, now blend it out, cat. Okay, so that's physical movement, and it's getting to the segmenting and the blending skills that I'm trying to do with them. So this is like an example where it's not just physical movement, but it's actually incorporated into the learning. We're using movement to learn something. This is an activity that they love. And I'm actually in the process of looking for some more physical movements for that, for blending and segmenting, because we've been doing it for a little while now. So now I feel good and I want to add a new piece. But actually, the first day that I taught this to my students, and I taught it in small groups, one of my students actually thanked me. He said, "Thank you, Miss Tammy. I really liked this." He said it in Spanish because right now, he's kind of choosing, he actually speaks English, but he's kind of choosing when he'll speak English. So he said it in Spanish, but he thanked me, and I thought that was so awesome. Like, it's not always that we're being thanked, although for some reason with my kids, they do thank me a lot. So I don't know if that's cultural, but they'll, like, at the end of the day, "Thank you, Miss Tammy. Thank you for the class, Miss Tammy." So I don't know if that's just cultural, maybe here in Mexico, because it's not the first year. So I'm kind of thinking maybe that is something that they just do kind of culturally, is like thanking each other, or, like thanking their teachers, or thinking like, "Oh, thank you so much for this class," whatever. But anyway, I just thought it was really awesome. So yeah, that was pound and sound, and I am loving that activity so much. Other new thing, and okay, I guess this isn't totally this wasn't something that I started for the physical movement, but I realized it's something that's embedded within, and it is something new this year. I have mentioned on the podcast before that we're using Seesaw, which is an app on the iPad, and it's like a digital portfolio, and it's so great because it's so user friendly that your littles can use it. I just love it so much. But this has allowed them for even more physical movement, because it means they're frequently throughout the day, and they decide when. I do have a Seesaw station during math station, so there is also a designated time, but what's awesome is like they're working and they're like, hey, I want to take a picture of this and show my mom and dad. So they get up, they have to go to the lock box where the iPads are not locked during the day. It's opened up for them, but they have to walk there, get the iPad, take it to their place, take their picture or take their video, and then return it. So it's kind of awesome how this has embedded more movement throughout the day. So again, it wasn't something I actually strategically decided on for the physical movement, but did notice that, hey, this is getting to those physical movements. Something that is not so new, but kind of, because I actually started to do this at the end of last school year, but kind of forgot about it this school year. Not really forgot about it, but I didn't really intentionally think about it. Yeah, I guess forgot about it is probably the most appropriate and accurate way to describe it. But like physically representing vocabulary through actions or some kind of physical body representation. So I started to use this because last year my strategy, which is really more like an element, my focus, I guess you could say, was non-linguistic representation. So one of the last strategies under that umbrella term that I focused on was this: how do you use your body to represent vocabulary? And as I was thinking through physical movement strategies and ideas, I remembered, oh yeah, that was something I did at the end of last school year, and I really, really liked it, and I found it to be super effective in helping, and all my students are English learners. I don't have anyone whose native language is English in my class. And actually I have several students who, speak or are learning to speak 3 languages, because I have a couple of Indian students, I have a Korean student, I have a Taiwanese student, I have an Italian student. Am I remembering everyone? So all my students are English learners, and then the other ones are native Mexican students. So they're, speaking Spanish and English, and then you have the other students who are, they were working with 3 languages. So, the vocabulary piece is very important because they're not super familiar with a lot of these terms. So we need ways to really help them to access it and learn it. And when I started to incorporate that, I really loved it. So I've been trying to be a little more intentional with that, and I've been doing it primarily through like my guided reading groups. And I'll give you an example. The other week, it might have just been last week, but in one group we were reading a book called When I Grow Up, and it was just when I grow up, I will be a pilot, I will be a diver, I will be a firefighter. So different kinds of careers. And so for everyone, we came up with an action. And then and I had the students help me, like, oh, what would be a good action for this word? And then so we read it again, and then we would act out for each term. They would do the physical movement, and that was really fun. It was fun, and it was a good way for them to help with the vocabulary piece. So that's something that I'm trying to be a little more intentional about, because I just think it's really good for them. Okay, so that's what I've been trying. Now for the last part, new things that I am interested in trying. So I'm kind of like now ready to add maybe a new piece, and I have a list of things that I'm interested in, but I probably will like choose one and focus on that for a while. So I'm not going to jump into all of these, but these are just kind of things that I'm thinking about. And I'm thinking really right now in literacy. So I know you might say, but you already, that's where you've been including it. Yes, I have to kind of start what's easy for me and what I can wrap my brain around, and then I can incorporate it into other things. So I'm sticking with literacy because that's what I'm doing. Okay, so one activity that I'm thinking about is slide a bead for each sound. So again, working on the blending and segmenting. But there was this activity I saw where you have like beads on a string, and then students can just slide the beads and then blend them. So again, and I slide that bead, I slide that bead, I slide that bead, and then I blend it, cat. So interested in trying that one. Also, tossing a ball for each sound. This I don't know if we'll have an actual ball, or maybe it's tossing something else. I feel like I have to be kind of careful, and this will be within small groups for sure. But this one I just think will be really good for them to practice the skill, but then moving. I just need to figure out a safe way to do it. Another one was that I'm looking at is race car blending. So you actually have like this race car track with maybe different boxes, or different points that they can drive through with their little toy car and make the sound. So if you can just imagine, you have a little toy car, you're controlling it and going down this racetrack where there are certain points designated for beginning, middle, and sound. So imagine that as you're making those sounds and then blending them together. I think that would be really fun. I just need to get some toy cars, so I'm either going to purchase those or ask parents if they have some extra ones to donate. A lot of times parents are more than happy to donate those things that we need, so that's kind of helpful. Counting out sounds on fingers. That's something I've done before, but one way that I saw it was the teacher had them all count out on their fingers, blend it, but then make like a game out of it where they might have like a group of objects in front of them, and every student has to do give the clue for the mystery object. So I'm thinking of the object. Let's say I have like a math cube in front of me. That's one of the objects. I might say the object is cube, and then somebody will have to think about, well, what is that word? And say, oh, is the word cube? Oh yes, the word is cube. So that looks like a really fun game, and I think my kids are really going to like it. I really want to try that. So those are other things that I'm looking at. That's kind of it for now. I don't want to overwhelm myself because slow and steady really wins the race. Okay, you guys, that's it. Just to recap, today we just kind of talked about, physical movement and how to incorporate that into learning. I went through things that I've already been doing. I went over new things I've been trying, and I also discussed things that I am thinking and contemplating about trying. Okay, on that note, let's go into the wins and fails segment. So win for the week, I have to say, because I've discussed this transition into this new school year has been a little bit rough. And I'm in my 10th year of teaching, so I'm not like, I don't have years and years and years and years of experience. I guess I have 10 years of experience, but I'm not like a super new teacher, but it's been really rough. Now, having said that, the beginning of pre-first is always rough because they're transitioning from early childhood into elementary, and that transition can be very emotional. It's tricky. I'm teaching them how to even function in elementary, so it's just very, very rough. But I did feel like this year was more rough than normal, and like I've kind of alluded to and explicitly even stated, the dynamics of my group is just that I have lots of squirrely kids and things going on, and so it's just kind of made it a little more challenging than what's already typically challenging. So this kind of put me into, I was just, for the first many weeks of school, I was not in a super great headspace. I was just in a space where I was feeling challenged, and I know that that's where good learning and growth happens. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm just being honest that I was in this space where I didn't feel super, super comfortable or even super, super confident, and was just feeling a little bit down and, just very contemplative of, where are things headed. But I am happy to report that after 9 weeks of school, I'm feeling like I am in a much better headspace. I'm feeling better. I've had to make changes for my group this year. And I think now that we've had 9 weeks of really getting to know each other, me making changes, I'm feeling so much better. I'm feeling so much more positive. I'm in a good headspace. I'm not where I was, and I'm happy to report that. Okay, fail for the week. Well, this past week in our team meeting, we kind of did an overview of our Unit 2 writing workshop. So we do this every time we're starting new units. We do an overview. And it's just helpful to kind of get a glance of what's happening in the units. And this isn't my first time doing the unit, but one thing that came out of the overview is there was a suggestion, really not even a suggestion, more of a statement from Lucy Calkins in the Unit 2 was like, you want to be going through your students' writing folders at least once every week. And I just went, gulp, because I do confer with students and meet with them and take notes on them. But am I actually looking through all their folders and each one of them every week? No, I'm not. So this was kind of a fail. And again, you guys, I want to say the fail is these are positive fails because you reflect on, it's important to recognize what didn't work so you can actually make it work. So I don't mean this in a negative light whenever I do a fail, but it was a great fail because it's helping me to fail forward. So now I've had to think about, well, what will be my system? So then I decided, well, maybe just like every day I can take 5 to 6 writing folders home, or even if I can find the time in my day, because sometimes I do have time where I'm like, oh hey, I could, like priorities, right? I can fit it in there. So either by just making sure that I'm looking at 5 to 6 writing folders a day, whether that's taking it home and just briefly looking over it, or finding time within the school day or even after school, because I stay until about 4:30 sometimes. If I just intentionally schedule that into my day, I can easily do it. I brought 5 home this week and it took, 10 minutes. I mean, really not long, just kind of going through and noting where they are, and making observations of, the writing process and where they are and what they're doing and where they need to go. So it was kind of a fail, but like I said, those are good fails because now I have a plan, man. I know what I'm going to do to move forward with that. So that is my fail for the week. Okay, you guys, on that note, it is a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I know we have so many choices when it comes to podcast listening, so I just appreciate your time. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for physical movement and how to incorporate it into the learning, or do you have any thoughts on what I shared? If so, I would love to hear from you. Go ahead and you can tweet to me. I'm at TammyJ123. That's at TAMIJ123. Also, I don't think I've ever asked that, but if you enjoy what you are hearing, I would love for you to rate me on Apple Podcast. They say it helps others find your podcast. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm going to be honest, but I would just love to get your feedback. So if you have the time, if you can go to Apple Podcast and, just put in a little rating, I would so enjoy that. Or even just share this podcast with a friend if you think it's worth listening to. All right, you guys, that's it. It is a wrap. Until next time. Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.